The straps of the suitcase dug into my palms as I hauled them up the steps of the resort. The sun was beating down, the air thick with salt and heat, and sweat ran down my back. My family trailed behind me, laughing, not lifting a finger. Then it happened. Dad's voice cut through the air, sharp and mocking. "Careful there. Our little porter might drop the bags." Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us, where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. They laughed. All of them. My stepmother's laugh was like nails on glass. My brother Kyle actually pulled out his phone to take a picture, grinning like this was comedy night. For a second, I froze. I wanted to scream, wanted to tell them how much it burned every time they reduced me to nothing. But instead, I set the luggage down gently, wiped my hands on my jeans, and straightened up. I forced a calm smile. "No problem," I said quietly. That was all. 2 words: calm, steady, controlled. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed a single number. My husband picked up instantly. I didn't even need to explain, just a simple confirmation. Then I hung up. My family looked at me strangely. Dad raised an eyebrow. "Who was that?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your boss? Gonna ask him for a tip?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because just then a black SUV pulled up to the resort entrance. Out stepped Daniel, my husband. He wore a crisp suit despite the heat, and the second his eyes landed on me, his whole face softened. He walked straight over, slipped his hand around mine, and kissed my temple like the rest of them didn't even exist. "You ready to check in?" he asked. I nodded. "More than ready." We started walking toward the glass doors, but behind us the mocking laughter turned into whispers of confusion. Then came the moment that still makes me smile when I think about it. 2 resort security guards approached my father, my stepmother, and Kyle. The manager was with them, tablet in hand. "Excuse me," the manager said politely but firmly. "May I see your room keys?" "Of course," Dad said smugly, flashing the plastic cards like trophies. The manager scanned them, frowned, and shook his head. "I'm afraid these don't belong to you. The reservation is under Emma Reed. Without her authorization, you cannot stay." I heard the sharp intake of breath. I didn't need to turn around to know their faces had dropped. "What do you mean?" Marla shrieked. "She's not. This must be a mistake." But the keys were already gone, plucked neatly from their hands by security. I didn't stop walking. Didn't even glance back. As Daniel opened the resort doors for me, I simply whispered, "Enjoy the view from outside." For once, I wasn't the porter. I was the one holding the power, and that was just the beginning. The glass doors of the resort slid open with a soft hiss, and for the first time in years, I walked in ahead of my family. Not behind them, not carrying their bags, not shrinking into the background. Daniel's hand was warm at my back as the cool air-conditioned breeze rushed over me. I didn't look back. Not yet, but I could feel it. Their stares drilling into me, the confusion, the disbelief. They weren't used to being on the outside. They weren't used to me being anything other than the one they could push around. The lobby glowed with golden light from chandeliers, polished marble floors reflecting the soft shimmer. Guests in expensive linen clothes checked in at the reception, couples lounged with cocktails by the indoor bar, and staff whisked past with trays of fruit and champagne flutes. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low so only I could hear. "You sure you're ready for this?" I smiled faintly. I've been ready my whole life. We walked straight to the front desk. The manager who had just stripped the keys from my father was already waiting, bowing slightly. His tone was different now, polished, respectful, deferential. "Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed, welcome. We've prepared the presidential suite as requested. Your luggage will be taken up right away." I nodded calmly, but inside I felt something stir, a mix of vindication and fire. Presidential suite. The same suite my father had boasted about reserving all month. The one he bragged about on family calls, claiming it was his treat for the people who mattered. But it wasn't in his name. It was in mine. As the elevator doors opened, Daniel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Let them watch," he murmured, and I did. As the elevator doors slowly closed, I let my eyes flick back one last time. There they were. Dad, red-faced, fists clenched. Marla, whispering furiously, her manicured nails digging into his arm. Kyle, standing awkwardly, his smirk long gone. They looked powerless, like the ground had been pulled from beneath them. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, calm, quiet, but enough to burn. The doors shut. The presidential suite was everything they had bragged about and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows with an ocean view, silk sheets, a balcony that seemed to stretch into the horizon. A private pool glittered under the sun, and fresh flowers filled the air with soft fragrance. I dropped onto the wide couch, letting my body sink into the cushions, the weight of years of humiliation lifting, piece by piece. Daniel poured 2 glasses of champagne from the welcome tray and handed me one. "To finally getting what you deserve," he said. I clinked my glass against his, the bubbles fizzing softly. "To never being their porter again." We laughed, but it wasn't just laughter. It was release. It was years of silence breaking into something sharp and strong. Still, part of me knew this wasn't over. My father wasn't the kind of man to let go easily. The silence wouldn't last, and I was right. It was barely an hour later when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps against the door. Daniel gave me a look, half warning, half question. I set down my glass and stood, my heels clicking softly on the polished wood. When I opened the door, there he was, Richard Reed, my father, standing tall and furious, Marla right behind him, Kyle sulking on the side. His face was red, not from the sun but from humiliation. "We need to talk," he snapped. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "About what?" "How to carry your bags better." His jaw clenched. "Don't get smart with me, Emma. You know damn well this is childish. That suite, this whole trip, was supposed to be for family." I tilted my head. "Family. Interesting word choice considering you've never treated me like one," Marla scoffed. "Oh, don't start playing the victim again. You think just because you married someone with money, you're suddenly better than us?" Daniel stepped forward then, his presence filling the doorway. His voice was calm but edged with steel. "She doesn't think she's better. She is better. And if you're here to insult her, this conversation ends now." Dad's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. His tone dropped lower. "Emma, be reasonable. You can't just take things out from under us like this." I almost laughed. Reasonable? For years, I'd been the one carrying their bags, cooking their meals, cleaning up after their chaos, all while being told I was useless. And now that I had the upper hand, they wanted reason. I met his gaze and spoke slowly, clearly, so every word landed. "I didn't take anything from you. You never had it to begin with." His face twisted. Kyle muttered something under his breath, something about how I was showing off. Marla hissed, "Don't forget where you came from, Emma." I stepped closer, the door still between us, but my voice sharp enough to cut through the air. "Oh, I remember exactly where I came from. That's why I'll never let you put me back there again." For a moment, no one spoke. The hallway was thick with tension, the sound of the ocean muffled in the background. My father's fists tightened, but he said nothing more. Marla tugged at his arm, muttering angrily, and finally, they turned away. I closed the door slowly, the click echoing like finality. Daniel wrapped his arms around me, pressing his lips to my hair. "You did good," he whispered, but inside I wasn't done. Not yet. They thought this was about a hotel suite. They had no idea it was about so much more, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying their baggage anymore. They were carrying mine, and I was just getting started. I barely slept that night. Not because of guilt, I had none, but because of the steady hum of adrenaline running through my veins. Every laugh they'd ever thrown at me, every cruel remark, every time they'd made me feel small replayed in my head. And for the first time, instead of breaking me, those memories fueled me. Morning light spilled across the suite, the waves crashing softly below. Daniel was still asleep, but I was up early, standing on the balcony with a cup of coffee. My phone buzzed, a message from the resort manager. Per your instructions, the charges for the family's stay have been canceled. They are not authorized to book under your account. I smiled. I had given those instructions the night before. My father thought he could storm back in and fix things with money, but this time, money wasn't his weapon. It was mine. By mid-morning, the knock came again. "Harder, sharper! Emma!" Dad's voice thundered through the door. Daniel stirred awake, rolling over with a groan. "You really want to deal with him now?" I set my cup down. "Yes, but on my terms." I opened the door just enough to see them. Richard, Marla, and Kyle. Their clothes were wrinkled, their hair unkempt. Clearly they hadn't slept well. The fury in my father's eyes was barely contained. "You think this is funny?" he snapped. "Humiliating your family? We couldn't even get a basic room last night because of you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean the family that laughed while I carried their luggage like hired help?" "That family?" Kyle jumped in, his voice sharp. "Stop acting like some queen just because you married a guy with money. You're still you, Emma. You're still nothing." That one almost got to me. Almost. But instead of reacting, I leaned against the doorframe and looked straight at him. "Funny. For someone who calls me nothing, you sure seem bothered that I have something you don't." His face flushed and Marla hissed, "You're tearing this family apart." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "No, Marla. You tore it apart years ago when you decided I wasn't good enough to sit at the same table as you. When you made it clear that I was just an errand girl in my own father's house. All I did was stop playing along." Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me, Emma. We can put this behind us. Give us access to the suite, and when we get home, I'll make sure you're taken care of. Maybe even include you in some of the family business decisions." I tilted my head, studying him. For once, he wasn't barking orders. He was bargaining. "With me? No," I said simply. His nostrils flared. "You ungrateful—" Daniel appeared behind me, his voice calm but firm. "That's enough. You will not speak to my wife that way. Not anymore." The silence that followed was heavy. My father's authority, once absolute, shattered right there in that hallway. He could yell, he could threaten, but the keys weren't in his hands anymore. And then, as if the universe wanted to drive the point home, 2 resort staff members arrived with a cart piled high with breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries, silver domes covering steaming dishes. They wheeled it straight into the suite, past my stunned family, nodding respectfully to me. "Good morning, Mrs. Reed," one of them said warmly. I glanced at my father. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched, but his silence spoke louder than any insult. I turned back to the staff with a gracious smile. "Thank you. Please make sure no other guests attempt to charge anything to our account." "Yes, ma'am." As the cart rolled in, I closed the door firmly, leaving my family standing in the hallway with nothing but their anger. Inside, Daniel pulled me into a hug, his chest warm against mine. "That was brutal," he murmured. I exhaled slowly. "It was necessary. Because here's the truth. It was never about the resort or the room or the keys. It was about finally showing them that their power over me was gone. They had spent years convincing me I was beneath them, but now they couldn't even step into a hotel lobby without my permission. For once, I wasn't the one waiting outside the door. They were, and I intended to keep it that way. By evening, I thought maybe they would leave me alone. Maybe humiliation had finally silenced them, but I should have known better. The resort's dining hall glittered under chandeliers, filled with couples and families dressed in their best. Daniel and I walked in, my hand tucked into his arm, the soft rustle of my evening dress trailing across the marble floor. Heads turned, not because of me, but because of him. Daniel had that presence, the kind that drew eyes and quieted rooms. We were led to our private table near the balcony, ocean waves shimmering under the moonlight beyond the glass doors. The waiter poured wine, set down silverware that gleamed under the lights. It should have been perfect. Until I saw them. My father, Marla and Kyle stormed into the dining hall, their frustration written all over their faces. They hadn't changed clothes since the morning. They looked out of place among the elegance, out of control among the calm. And of course, they came straight to me. The room fell into a hush. I could feel people watching, forks pausing midair, conversations stalling as the storm arrived at my table. Richard leaned down, his voice low but loud enough to carry. "You think you can embarrass me in front of this entire resort? You think you can take what's mine and flaunt it like this?" Marla's voice was shrill. "Everyone knows she's nothing without his money." She jerked her chin at Daniel. "You married up, Emma. Don't pretend otherwise." Kyle slammed his palm on the table, rattling the glasses. "You're pathetic. You'll never actually belong here." Every muscle in my body tensed, but I didn't shrink. Not this time. Slowly, I set down my wine glass and rose to my feet. My heels clicked against the polished floor, sharp in the silence. I looked at them, each one of them, and then I raised my voice, not in anger, but in clarity. "You want to humiliate me? Go ahead. Do it louder. Let everyone hear how you treat your own daughter. Tell them how you laughed while I carried your bags, how you called me a porter, how you mocked me every chance you got." Murmurs rippled through the room. Diners shifted, eyes narrowing toward my family. The tables around us leaned in, listening. I didn't stop. All my life, I've been nothing to you. Nothing but someone to use, to belittle, to step on so you could feel bigger. But tonight the keys are in my name. The suite is mine. The respect is mine. And the shame. I glanced at them one by one. The shame is all yours. Richard's face turned crimson. Marla hissed, "You ungrateful brat." But Daniel stood then, placing his hand gently on my shoulder before turning to face them. His voice was calm, commanding, impossible to ignore. "This ends now. You don't get to walk into her life anymore and tear her down. Not here, not ever again. If you can't respect my wife, you don't get to be part of her world." The silence that followed was suffocating. My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. The dining hall, full of strangers, had already judged them. Their power crumbled in real time, not because of me, but because of their own cruelty finally exposed. Security appeared at the doorway, alerted by the disturbance. The manager stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed," he said firmly to my father and Marla. "You're disturbing the guests. I'll have to ask you to leave." A collective gasp swept across the room. People stared as my family, once so smug, so untouchable, was escorted out under the watch of strangers they had wanted so badly to impress. I sat back down, my chest heaving, but not from fear. From release. From finally letting go. Daniel took my hand, his thumb brushing against my skin. "You were brilliant," he whispered. I looked out over the ocean, the waves rolling endlessly beneath the moonlight. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying anyone's luggage but my own. For the first time, I felt free. And as the room slowly returned to its rhythm, clinking glasses, soft music, gentle conversation, I knew one thing for certain. They could laugh at me all they wanted, but I would never be their porter again, because I wasn't the one standing outside the door anymore. They were.